Welcome to Withdraw Consent. I'm Jack. This is Victor. This is going to be the first episode in our villain series, and I'm very excited to hear the story about Muammar Gaddafi.
All right. So I get to start with a personal story with this. This is my first political memory, is the bombings in 86.
I don't even know about them.
Right. Okay. So 4th or 5th grade, public school, all of the kids knew, they came to school knowing that we had bombed Libya. And as school kids, we were calling him Gaddafi Duck. That was our little nickname.
Did you know coming to school?
Yes. This was, yeah.
And what grade?
4th or 5th.
Wow.
So mid-'80s. You were probably too young. I'm assuming you have no recollection
No.
of this.
I don't know anything of this.
And literally all we knew, we mocking his name.
Gaddafi the Duck.
Like Gaddafi Duck.
Oh,
like,
okay.
you know, the Daffy Duck.
Okay.
You know, we're doing that type of thing. And we knew he was the bad guy because we bombed him. And he got what he needed. I mean, that's literally as deep as it went, but it was a happy occasion. Okay? So.
It reminds me of the Tom McDonald song where he's conditioning the baby.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
It's one.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you how I knew that. I'm sure
Amazing.
it was.
That's really amazing.
Yeah, incredible. So now this isn't going to be a deep dive into all this. We're just going to skim and try to get the high points and just try to make an overall evaluation.
Sounds good.
When you look him up on Wikipedia, there's a note at the top that says this page is too long for one read. It needs to be broken up. There's an incredible amount of information.
Wow.
So we're, again, just high points. I intentionally am missing stuff, but yeah, we're trying to keep this within our normal, length of videos as opposed to a, full documentary series. So he was in the military. He like 60s. He rises through the ranks. He gets his group of officers together, and they want to overthrow the government. And I heard one podcast was saying that on the night that they were going to overthrow the king, that he was at a rock concert and they didn't want to do it during the concert, and so they actually put it off. They're almost trying to be polite or respectful. So August 31st, 1969, the King Ibis, is in Turkey getting a medical treatment. Gaddafi and his officers just take over the government at night. Everyone wakes up in September. It's an entirely new government. It's just done. So It's a bloodless coup.
Wow.
And it was just a new thing was happening.
Boy, risky to go for an operation, huh?
Right.
Wow.
But just, I was trying to picture, imagine just waking up. There's no Congress. There's no House of...
Right.
What is going on?
Yeah.
But, especially in our country, so giant, what could you even do? You're just like, I guess this is how it is now.
Right.
And so everyone was just kind of, going along with it. So at any point in the story, I want you to interrupt me once you see the patterns.
Okay.
Because there's going to be stuff you're like, I know this.
Okay.
This is a familiar thing. And just interrupt me and go, this is, okay?
Gotcha.
Because these are the moments that you're going to, and yeah, the story's incredible. So we're going to go through the different things he accomplished while he was in charge of Libya. So from 69 through 2011, I believe, was when he was assassinated. So it was 40...
2 years? That's...
Yeah, giant
Wow.
run. Okay. Number one, he nationalized all the oil. So the government was in charge of all of it. Zero indication that he made himself wealthy or that this was about... enriching himself or the people in charge.
That immediately makes me suspicious of Putin because they say he's worth, like $3,000 trillion. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Is he?
Right.
Because he really does care about the Russian people, but I also want to know if he's self-benefiting.
Right.
Because this guy I seem to like that he's not self-benefiting.
Right.
Obviously.
Yeah, and there's just lots of stories that really back this up. They're like, oh.
But are they lying to us about Putin having that wealth?
Right.
Just saying. I'm interested in looking into it. Go ahead.
Totally. All right. No one got charged for electricity in Libya. It was just because of the wealth coming in, the government took care of it.
Okay.
It was illegal for the state-controlled banks to do what?
Interest.
Interest.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding at all. It was against the law.
Oh my
to do this. He considered housing a human right. So when you got married, you got 60,000 dinar, 50,000 US dollars to start your life, to go for your first house. When he died, the average income was $12,000 a year. So you got 4 years' salary, basically, on average, when you got married to get things going. His vow, he wanted everybody to have their own house because he thought it was a right. And he said, my parents will not get a house until everyone else in Libya has a house. And his parents died in a tent because he was that serious about...
We need to picture this dude on the wall. This
Kind
dude's
of.
phenomenal. I had no idea. I thought he was pretty cool.
Right. But
But
yeah,
we'll see. Okay, we'll see where this goes.
we're early on the list.
Okay.
I mean, it could go sideways on us here. Education and medical was all free in Libya. If they could not get you the procedure or whatever you wanted, they paid for you to go to the other country and gave you a stipend to live there while you were getting the treatment.
Is this all being paid for with oil money? What's the taxation
oil.
level?
I didn't see anything good or bad about taxes, but I mean, we're getting oil. Like you go fill up your gas, it was 14 cents a gallon.
Love it.
Because it was just like barely covering costs, like
Right.
that type of thing. If you wanted to become a farmer, so it's a kind of a nomadic people, but if you wanted to settle down and have a farm, they'd give you the land, the house, the equipment, the seeds, and the livestock to get started, to make food for the people. If you buy a new car in Libya, the government subsidized half the cost. They had zero external debt. So they didn't owe any countries any money, and they had in reserve $150 billion. Let's see.
What's the population? Just give me an estimate.
Low millions. Triple I believe, was in the million, like 1 point something million.
But like for the whole population, we're talking like 10 million, 50 million?
Yeah, it's a tenth of the UK. I'm not sure if that...
Okay.
I remember that from a different stat, but
Okay.
yeah, I don't have a number for
Okay.
you.
I'm going to guess around 10 million. I'm just going to guess.
Okay, yeah,
I'll put it up on the
I
screen.
think that's reasonable.
In post-production.
Okay. Let's see. So there was a profit sharing in place for the oil. So in addition to all this other stuff, everybody was getting $500 a month just put into their bank account because you were Libyan and were selling oil. You have a Libyan child, you get $5,000.
And what's a Libyan child?
Born of Libyan parents.
Okay, got you.
40 loaves of bread in Libya cost 15 cents. 25% had university degrees. He carried out the world's largest irrigation project known as the Great Man-Made River Project to make water readily available throughout the desert country. So no charge for water. But he did this giant thing so that everybody...
Well, it's just becoming more and more tragic.
Right.
The height that it was. Wow.
So you're doing all this stuff, and have you sensed any patterns, or does it sound like anyone we know?
Well, I mean, it sounds like someone we know.
Okay.
Yeah, a certain German leader.
That's right.
But it also sounds like the stuff that
Right.
we want, but just for a different country. Like I've never
Yes.
mentioned building a river, but I don't live in a desert.
Or like, how do you subsidize all these programs? Well, you do the oil, and like it's a variation of
Right.
National Socialism.
Right. Very interesting.
I didn't see one connection to that in any pro or anti Gaddafi article or anything that I like. I didn't see this anywhere, but this is what this is.
It's what it is. Was this guy directly influenced?
Yeah, there was some other African guy, I forget his name, that he was supposedly getting all this stuff from, and I did not look into him.
Okay, great.
So one of the first things he did, guess who he removed from his country?
The Jews.
The Jews.
Are you serious?
100%
Why?
serious.
On what grounds?
Well, I mean, the articles say because he was xenophobic. That's the reason, because he just hated anyone who
Does
wasn't
xenophobic
Libyan.
mean you hate people who charge you interest? Is that what that word means? I forget.
It could be in this context.
Okay.
And so, I'm reading it, and so I have this picture in my head. I'm like, okay, so he's like our, World War II leader, in Germany. And then I'm like, okay, so is everything I'm reading bad about this guy just made up? And in the same paragraph where they said they removed the Jews, they said he also forced out all the Italians that were there, made them dig up all of their relatives dead, like in the graves, and take the dead bodies with them because he didn't want Italians buried in his country. And it's like, so this is, I'm just getting like Holocaust vibes out of all this stuff. And you start seeing all these crazy stories. Like he would, the people who opposed him, he would keep the bodies in his freezer so that he could go and gloat anytime he wanted.
Oh, this is highly improbable.
What?
This is insane. When you told me the Italian stories about the bodies, it reminds me of this Russian propaganda book.
Okay.
And it was like it was like just huge and just full of lies, but it was so amazing. And they told the stories about the Germans who then cremated the Jews that they were gassing, and then kept their ashes so they could put their ashes on the cabbages. So the cabbages would grow so they could feed them to people they're about to kill. Does ash help stuff grow?
Right.
Is that a thing? This is so improbable. Like, you got to calculate this out.
Right.
We got this many bed space, but we're waiting for them cabbages to grow up because we really need them to munch on just a little bit of it, you know, before we kill. Oh, it just sounds like the same stuff.
Right. It's the same.
Amazing.
So in my head, I got to thinking about they're running a Hitler light playbook on. It's like it's all. I feel like that's a feeling. I don't have any proof that it's made up, or I just feel like I'm reading the same story about a different person.
Okay. And I also, as you do this, I'm going to pretend like all of the lies about him are true and see if I still want him as a leader. Okay. Because he did all those good things. He made the Italians unbury their dead and bury them in Italy. That's not the worst.
Right.
Kind of, the people who opposed him, he kept them in the freezer. It's not really the worst. I mean, was it higher or lower than the Clinton body count? Where are we at with that? And that's just one, not even a president. We're talking about Hillary here. So it's not even a president, a secretary of state, a senator. Right. That's what we're dealing with. Right. Now do LBJ and his body count. Okay. That's for another villain series.
So during the, he was getting everything going in the 70s. There was the 80s, there was a lot of terrorism. I don't know if you remember, like there was bombings, like the Olympics. There was,
I'm so sorry.
This was, they would hijack airplanes.
Right.
I remember Chuck Norris movies, Delta Force, and all that was all about, the terrorism.
Yeah. Okay, I remember.
We had PLO. We had IRA. There was a lot of stuff going on in there. So the U.S. in '79, I believe, made a list that was states that support terrorism. And Libya got put on this. Now, I don't have concrete information as to why. Like, why at that point that the belief was that they supported terrorism. And so in my mind, I immediately go back to, well, they kicked all the Jews out. So
that's what I was just thinking.
Right. And
if you don't want interest to be charged in your country, you're kind of supporting a terrorist supporter, kind of. You should probably be nuked.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Probably
relentlessly, sanctions. Yeah.
The ground salted, so that nothing would ever grow again.
Yeah. So early 80s, we closed their embassy in the U.S. because, terrorism and all this kind of stuff. And Reagan has a infamous speech or whatever where he calls them the mad dog of North Africa or something, and that becomes his moniker, is Mad Dog Gaddafi. Is
like a mad dog like a leader who really wants to help their people and see them prosper? Is that what a mad dog is?
Well, it's someone who says crazy stuff, like the international waters at 12 miles. If anyone crosses that is the line of death, and we're going to attack you. It's like crazy stuff like that. Like you're going to defend your land.
Wow, that sounds insane.
It is
World War III.
Right.
Is that literally an example?
That's literally something Gaddafi said. And so I was trying to find reasons why. Like I literally just searched in DuckDuckGo, which is basically Google at this point. I typed in reason why, Gaddafi was called Mad Dog. Third link from the top. So first page, right at the top, I'm reading this thing, and it's like, he took and he burned all the musical instruments in Tripoli, which is the capital, because no more music, no more happiness. And banned all football games because that's where you could go and conspire against them.
Did you know that in Nazi Germany, it was every single day was gray skies?
Oh,
did you know that? The sun didn't come out for 12 years. Look at Valkyrie. Like the entire movie with Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
The entire gray skies.
Right. It's evil.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing this list and I'm like, okay, I just want to see pictures of them burning the instruments.
And they were playing instruments in the swimming pool.
Gaddafi burning instruments, and it's page after page of the Taliban destroying instruments. Couldn't find one other entry in this third from the top article.
Why does the Taliban do it? Is it a religious thing?
Maybe I didn't look into it. Okay. I just didn't see anything about Libya. So I'm like, all right, so Libya football. Oh, they've had their own league since the 50s. They participate in international play. They have a Libya Cup in the 70s. So, I mean, if you...
What's your source on the third down on the DuckDuckGo? What is the source?
It'll be in the comments.
Okay. But is it reputable-ish? Is it mainstream?
It's not like a news place. It's a place that does biographies. It's called biographies.
Okay, I'll put
whatever.
Okay.
But I'm just like, okay, so it's just this person is just making stuff up to support his position. Mm-hmm. So I don't have great examples of why he was called Mad Dog. I couldn't find a good source for it besides the line of death, which isn't.
Everybody acknowledges that everybody gets 12 nautical miles.
Right.
And the U.S. says ours is 24. Right. Come within 24. So we're like mad dog.
Right.
You know?
So much ocean.
This is a standard thing. Yeah, we want all the ocean. Well, 24 nautical miles of it, you know.
Right. So
let me ask you a question.
Sure.
I don't know if you know the answer to this.
Okay.
I kind of put you on the spot here.
Yeah, that's fine.
How long do you think it took for him to be xenophobic? Like from the time he started in...
I got the impression he came in like that. That these were the things that he wanted to change
so
for the good of the people.
My first day. Okay, type of issues.
Yeah, but I would feel like people getting kicked out was in the first few years.
Late 60s, early 70s. Maybe mid 70s, the latest. Okay.
Yeah. So, let's see. So, by the 80s, early 80s, the U.S. and they're putting sanctions on Libya because supporting terrorism, whatever. So, going into that, they had one of the highest GDP per capita in the whole world. They had a higher standard of living than Japan. So, I mean, their country was doing amazing. And then now they lose the ability to import and export with the rest of the world.
Why? How did they lose the ability?
Because of the sanctions.
We sanctioned them? Okay.
Yeah.
What year is this?
80, 81. Okay. Like real early on.
Reagan, okay.
Yeah. This was all this early stuff was happened with Reagan. So now we're going to fast forward a little bit to 86, and we're going to start talking about the bombings. Now,
what level was his military at this point? Like, did he have a great military because they got this money, or did they not have a big defense budget?
I don't really know about that.
Because if you got all this wealth, usually that's what kind of it translates into
to defend yourself.
Right.
I know there was definitely nuclear programs going on, which we're going to get into a little bit. They had leftover like mustard gas from the previous regime, or the king and that type of thing. So they definitely had some military stuff. I don't know to the extent of it. So there's this a disco in Berlin gets bombed, and Britain.
You mean like a suicide bombing, or like a bomb from the sky?
No, like a terrorist attack.
Okay,
like who knows who actually did it?
Okay, yeah, gotcha.
It's attributed to I want to say PLO, but I'm not 100% sure. And Britain starts picking up this radio chatter coming out of Tripoli, out of Libya, and they're giving specifics about this bombing that happened the day before. And they start picking up all this stuff about what their plans are and support with other like terrorist organizations and all that. And
so this is kind of like if you're involved in a crime and then you just get on the internet and tell everybody about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and
plausible.
Expect it to be perfectly fine. So Reagan's stance is if anybody is on that list of terrorism and there's proof that you're, backing terrorists or involved in this, then you're going to get a military response. So America is immediately like, we're going to, bomb Libya. They kind of, the impression I got that England and Germany kind of went along with it, but they weren't gung-ho about it. France and Spain had the same reaction you did. They're like, this doesn't make sense. Why are they giving out details from this bombing that already happened? And why does the language sound very close to the language that comes out of Israel from their official, statements and that type of thing? And so Spain and France were completely out on it, to the extent that when the bombing did happen, they said, you can't even use our airspace to, when you're flying, you have to go around in order to, cross over and get them. Which is very interesting that they, picked up on this, that quick. So now if we fast forward 4 years, a book comes out a book by Viktor Ostrovsky. Butchered the name, I apologize. Jewish fellow. Expert marksman in his teams, ends up joining the IDF. He's military police for a while. Spent 6 years in the Navy, ends up getting recruited by Mossad in 1984. He's there for a few years through the time of the bombings. He ends up leaving because he's so disgusted with how the Mossad treats their own government, like the underhanded, dishonest stuff that's going on. So he writes this like a tell-all book about here's what's going on. Mossad's official stance on him is that he was in training for all those years and doesn't actually know anything. So you can't really, believe what he's saying.
It's a long training program.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's completely full of it, especially when you hear what he says. So he says about the bombing in Libya that they sent Mossad in, they rented an apartment in Tripoli, and they planted something they call a Trojan. The Trojan is connected via radio to a Mossad group that's their psychological warfare group. They create messages, beam them to this device, which then repeats it on normal Libya government channels. So it's like it's coming from the government, but it's just them making up their involvement.
That any logical human being would immediately say, that's not probably real.
Right.
Right. Like France and myself in Spain.
Right, in France. Okay. Yeah, totally. But the U.S. just, ready to bomb people. And so it was just all a complete fabrication to get the United States to bomb Libya. And so what that did was, from Israel's perspective, is it solidified America's, like what side they were on. Are they pro-Israel or are they...
Subservience. America's subservience. Interesting.
And they're on the side of Israel. And it derailed there was negotiations. Hezbollah had a couple of our journalists. And they were close to getting a release. And from Israel's perspective, that would have lessened tensions. And they didn't want that. So the bombing made the negotiations fall through for the journalists. So, again, it's just...
When they bombed 1986, the U.S. did, what were their targets? Like military, infrastructure, oil production, refineries? What were they?
It was the city. They were bombing the city of Tripoli. Gaddafi's adopted daughter died in the bombing.
Just bombing the people?
That was the impression I got. I didn't see specifics. It was 100 planes. I know that.
Sounds not terroristy.
No, not.
Right?
No, seems like good military targets. Okay. So Gaddafi goes and he wants to try to repair his image.
What if the Berlin bombing was done by the Mossad?
That's what. So when I first brought that up, I said I don't even know who actually did that bombing.
Right.
And yeah, it could all be just a giant fabrication. Like the bombing really happened, but it was all just to get...
Because it's like, how do we get information on a terrorist bombing that's just really, really precise?
Right.
We just do it ourselves. You know what I'm saying?
We don't need
got
intel.
The inside scoop on this.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Amazing.
So...
It's our number one ally in the Middle East.
Right.
Okay.
Gaddafi, at some point, the sanctions are just rough on the people. And so he's trying to repair things so that he can get the sanctions lifted. So he agrees to torture people for the United States under Bush, because we're not allowed to torture people. So we ship them to Libya. They take care of it, give us the intel, and then we haven't broken any rules, but we're still getting the information we want.
And what kind of people are we talking about?
Well, it was the war on terror. So I'm guessing Afghanis,
okay.
That type of people.
Do you think this is true?
I'm not sure about that one.
It seems more plausible.
Yeah, because if you're trying to do what's best for your people, then I could just...
It's not betraying your people.
Right.
So
you're not enriching yourself. Like it's... Yeah, maybe.
I wonder if you opened the freezer and asked his previous opponents for their advice.
Right. I forgot to tell you. So it was called the Green Book. He wrote it in 1975, but it outlined all of why he's doing what he's doing. Okay. And it was mandatory teaching for everyone in Libya because he wanted the people to understand his motives for things. Anyway, so he also agreed to dismantle his nuclear program. This was in 2003. Did
he have nuclear weapons at that time?
he had like centrifuges. He was working on it.
Okay.
The estimate was he was 5 to 7 years away in 2003 from having a working nuclear weapon.
Oh, he could have got one by 2008 to 2010. Would it came in handy? I'm just going to guess. I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know how the story is. No,
right. There were stories that he tried to buy them from other places, from China and I want to say Iran. He was trying to, but
okay.
again, I don't know.
really care to hear that.
Yeah.
Because it maybe not.
Yeah, but again, if the whole world's against you and you're trying to defend yourself,
or they could just be a lie, though. I'm just saying either way. Like,
yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely pretty much 50-50
Seems like
on
some
that one.
salon gossip, you know?
Yeah. He got very vague promises that the U.S. would help with security. Like, I didn't see it. Like, it was a written thing, like an official. Interesting. He definitely signed stuff and ratified.
Is he going to get the sanctions lifted if he does these things? The torture?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so we get to the late 2000s, and now he starts going down the road of he wants to make his own currency. He's got the dinar, and that's used in his country. But he wants.
Are they pretty still successful at this point now? Because the sanctions have been lifted now.
Yeah, I get the impression that things were going pretty good for him.
Okay, so he brought it back up.
And he was in charge. I forget there was not an organization, but it was a group that represented all of Africa. Like everyone had representatives.
I've heard about that.
And he was in charge of it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He was the head of it.
Oh, wow.
Because he had this incredibly prosperous thing.
Yeah.
And so basically he wants to let's do the dinar for all of Africa. Let's make that the African currency. And so at this point, he has 143 tons of gold that he's going to back his currency with, and almost the same weight worth of silver. And so, I mean, it's in the $7 to $8 billion worth of gold. I don't know what the silver equates to, but I mean, he's got a decent stash at this point. And so that removes the dependency on the dollar, and bankers don't like that type of thing.
The dinar.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if they switch this, it makes certain people that control things.
Wait, do you happen to know what regions did he sell his oil to the most? Do you know?
I do not know that.
It would just be interesting. Proximity-wise, you think it would be like Africa, Middle East, Europe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But not like Russia, China, or the U.S. because that's kind of farther.
Yeah, and I don't know how that worked with the sanctions, because I saw that the import and export was. He was frozen out of. So I don't know if some people, not everyone obeyed it, and he still sold it to other people. Yeah, I don't have specifics about that. So we get towards the late 2000s, and we're like Arab Springs type stuff, and these countries are supposedly these grassroots organizations, or
no outside involvement whatsoever.
No,
right,
definitely not. And so the story I saw was the U.S. is training mercenaries. They get them to go in to attack the government in Tripoli, Gaddafi's government. Media doesn't say anything about it.
What are these, like assassin mercenaries? Because they're not besieging the city; they're sneaking in.
But it's like rebels. Okay. I mean, it's more like a rebel
cockroach. I mean,
kind of, yeah. Okay. But not even. They're not even Libyans.
Are you going to do the cockroaches thing or no?
I'm not sure what you
mean. Okay, I'll do it. This is a part of the story that I do know. Okay, but go ahead.
Okay, and so. The government's being attacked by these rebels. The media says nothing. Gaddafi retaliates and starts killing the rebels. And now the whole world is saying Gaddafi's killing his own people. We have to stop this.
Okay, and let me insert cockroaches here. It's right around this point that he does a public statement saying he's going to crush these cockroaches, blah, blah, blah. Cockroaches are specifically these foreign rebel fighters who are Muslims from like a sect. You know what I mean? Who've been brought in through intel agencies and armed and this and that. And those are the cockroaches he's going to crush. We televised it and said, this monster, this mad dog, I guess probably they said that, calls his own people cockroaches. Okay. Like imagine, right. You know what I mean? And so then that got attributed to him.
Yeah, but it's such a skewed, like the dude loved his people. I mean,
right.
He was definitely
because they were trying to say that the rebels were the people though.
Right.
His own people. No, these are foreigners.
Right.
Because if you're one African nation over, you're a full foreigner to Libya. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay. Yeah, totally. So he ends up the UN and everyone, bombing, and it's just an insane amount of bombing, just destroying.
The UN's bombing him?
Yeah, bombing the country.
Okay.
And there were all these different clans inside Libya that Gaddafi had. They weren't fighting or anything. As soon as he's gone, it's just conflict after conflict within. And So the only thing that has changed is just white people now control the oil and the banks. After he's assassinated in 2011 by these rebels. The rebels leave Libya and just go to Syria and start the same thing all over again.
Because they're not part of Libya at all.
Right.
Why didn't the Libyan citizens stand up more? Why did they let the rebels come in?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it was because the bombing started happening and there was just, what did they do at that point?
So when you say the UN bombed them, the UN doesn't have bombers. So it's UN countries bringing their bombers?
Yeah. I mean, it's, the U.S., and I don't have a list of countries, but it was...
Your typical suspects, we'll say.
Right. These are people that bomb the brown countries.
Yeah.
And so the country was just doing amazing, and now it's not. It's just all the... You see these people describe what he was doing, and it's like he was bribing his people with all these great things so that they would let him be a tyrant. But there's
amazing.
What is the evidence of the tyranny? How are you a tyrant when you're making your people great?
I'll take that deal. You bribe me all of those things, and I will let you tyrannize over me to your heart's content. Tyrannize me harder. You know what I mean? All those things, just those things. I'm cool.
Yeah, there's stories of his brutal internal security forces.
Why would he need it? Brutal internal security forces if everybody's happy?
Unless it's just people who are coming in trying to ruin what you have. Then be brutal. You know what I mean? Those are the cool.
Right.
And you don't just give people houses and all that if you're going to then put your foot on their throat. And it doesn't make sense.
I need to get you from a tent into a house. My internal security service can kick down your door and raid it in the middle of the night and get you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Too difficult in a tent,
Yeah. There was I saw one quote was saying he wanted a revolution in Muslim countries. And what if he just wants all the Muslim countries to treat their people like he treats his? What if that's the revolution? That seems great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you just twist it a little bit and make it sound like he hates other Muslim countries and all that. And now, he's the bad guy.
Okay, got it. We get the Green Book.
Okay.
Right? We study it.
Okay.
And we make a new form of government. It's not called National Socialism. It's called Green Bookism.
Okay.
And we just pitch Green Bookism.
Green Book nationalism.
Because we can't do Gaddafiism either.
Right.
You know what I mean? Disassociated with anything you've ever... No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So I have a graph for you. I just want to show you the literacy of the country.
Okay.
This is a very different graph than I was expecting. It was very hard to find something that had literacy for a bunch of countries at once, so you can compare and all that.
Okay.
I was expecting an X. I was expecting the U.S. to start up at the top and be going down, and Libya is going up. Somehow, this graph shows that America is just 100% all the time.
Love it.
At the same time,
but only until it stops.
That's the last day this specific site had.
Okay.
And, one search criteria down, you see an article that says 54% of Americans have less than a 6th grade reading ability, and they classified that as being able to read and write a sentence about your everyday life. But yet, this graph says it's 100%. So, that's why I was expecting the U.S. to be dropping.
Right.
So you can see I've included multiple countries because I wanted to see, were they really different than their surrounding countries?
Right.
And basically everyone who's on the Mediterranean, who has the oil and that type of thing, they're doing way better than the people who are on the interior. So Sudan, Chad, Niger are, they're more the interior countries and they don't do as good. But you can see he did, it was a huge... increase. That's only from the 80s.
I just love that the United States is just 100% lie propaganda.
Right.
That's where we're at.
All lies.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Another thing about Gaddafi, just trying to...
It would be better if they had gone up to 110%.
Oh, yeah.
And then they just showed us climbing to 110%. Our dogs read or something,
right.
America.
So good. Just another little note about Gaddafi. He was Muslim, but he wasn't considered devout.
Interesting.
He had, we'll just say he wasn't a one-woman man.
Okay. Neither was Muhammad.
Okay.
So, okay.
But that's usually the biggest complaint, that his personal guard was all women. There's pictures of them, all in their little uniforms, and that was his personal bodyguards. And so just trying to, he wasn't a perfect dude. He had his...
Yeah, but if that's the price, if it's consensual adults and that's the price...
Right.
I'll pay it. Not with my daughter, but I'll pay it.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm totally with you.
No, I won't pay it myself. That sounds really weird. You know what I mean?
Right.
I will not really care too much. I mean,
so that's kind of the picture of Gaddafi that I came up with.
it's amazing.
Yeah.
I so want to read this green book.
Yeah, see, and that's another thing that I couldn't get a good read on, because everyone who, hates him and says he's the worst says it's just, it's full of all these ramblings and xenophobia and
Probably a lot of really good stuff.
Maybe.
Sounds like. I'm thinking it's very coherent and on the spot, we'll say.
Yeah, maybe.
It names the names of the people.
Yeah, it's only I think 82 pages or 85 pages. Like, it isn't like a giant...
I'm going to try to acquire it. I also really want to know what the beef was with the Italians. I wonder if it was something like colonizing related, right? Because Libya's in North Africa and Italy's down there. Do you know what I'm saying? It was probably like some past grievance, I imagine.
Well, I just think that was my guess is it was the other major body of people that weren't Libyans. And he just wanted Libya for Libyans.
Interesting.
That
doesn't sound like it should be allowed. Libya for Libyans.
Right. No, it should be for everyone.
Yeah, China.
Right. Right. So that's what I got.
Okay. I honestly thought this was very fascinating. I knew a couple of the facts, but I really didn't know details on them.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the entire presentation. Hopefully you guys did too. Hopefully you enjoyed it and got something out of it. And like I said before, this is the first part of our villain series. We're going to be going on. We're going to do the good guys who are actually the bad guys. He's going to be doing the bad guys who may or may not be the good guys. In this case, pretty darn good.
Seemed pretty reasonable.
Hopefully you enjoyed it and hope to see you next time.